Today I want to talk a bit about Old English and especially about verbs. Now in English there are two types of verbs. One is a strong verb and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now the difference between the two is that if I say I walk but yesterday I walked, that's one way of forming the past tense. But another way to do that with a verb is in a verb like run. So I run, but yesterday I ran. Now the difference between them is obviously that one, like run, ran, swim, swam, speak, spoke, dive, dove, they change the vowel to change the tense. However, with a weak verb, you have that ed is added to the end. So walk, walked, bake, baked, talk, talked, dive, dived, which is interesting because dive, depending on how you say it, is either a strong or a weak verb. So in Old English, which I'm going to talk about today, there are 7 classes of strong verbs, so where the vowel changes to indicate a change in tense. Now, if we look at some of the class 1, like shinan, we have shinan, shan, shinon, shinen. And then also with a word like abidan and also gripan, you can see that there is a pattern that develops between them of the various vowels that come after the other. But if we then take a look at class 3, like weorpan, yieldan and drinkan, you can see that, well, the pattern is a bit off. So in this video, I want to ask the question, why is the class 3 vowel progression so strange? Why doesn't it hold up true? That was good English. The answer, effectively, is sound change, and I'm going to look at which sound changes have affected the vowels to be so weird in this third class. So if we look at some of these, then we see that there is a vowel progression that is fairly standard that we can work with, and this vowel progression goes E, ash, U, O. But as we already have seen, lots of these verbs in the strong class 3 don't actually follow this vowel progression at all. So the first sound change I want to look at is called breaking. Now this is a little diagram of the mouth that is often used with high and low sounds in the mouth as well as those that are pronounced at the front and at the back. So if we look at 2 groupings of consonants that appear in the class 3 strong verbs, then we see HT and RP, so ht and rp. So both at the back of the mouth. However, if we look at 2 consonants that are the first 2 in the vowel progression, we have E and ash. They are both at the front of the mouth. So obviously if you're going to pronounce an E followed by a HT or an RP, or an ash followed by a HT or an RP, you would have to move from pronouncing a sound in the front of your mouth to the back of your mouth, which if you try it is actually, it's not difficult to do, but it takes a bit more effort. So this actually leads into the next name of this, which is called diphthongization. And a diphthong is simply where you have 2 vowels next to each other that work together. So in this word, which is pronounced seaxe, in Old English, you have the E and the A working as a diphthong. So ea, it goes up. That's the diphthong. And if we then look at the diagram of the mouth again, you see that often the E and the ash, which we would expect, actually changes to a diphthong of eo or ea, although initially it would have been ash-a, but that's even quite hard to say, so it's easier to go ea, which is what we get in the various progressions in breaking. So that goes from a reconstructed Proto-Germanic form of verpan, where there is no breaking and the rp you have, but then you have the e, which then changes to weorpan because it's a lot easier to say because you've got the diphthong in there, and the second form wearp, again with the diphthong. Now again with fechtan, which would be a reconstructed Proto-Germanic form, it instead goes to feortan with that diphthong in there, and fecht. Limited breaking is similar to breaking, but it only occurs before an L. And then there's also some exceptions that if an L is followed by another consonant, so like an LD for example, then it will not happen. So limited breaking only actually affects the second preterite form when the ash is expected. So the progression of the verb helpan, which is to help, goes helpan, help, hulpon, hulpen. And see that only the second one, the second preterite, is affected by adding in a diphthong rather than the ash. There is another type of diphthongization that takes place called palatal diphthongization, named after the palatal consonants of y, sh, and ch. Now in modern English, these noises actually are very different. If you have the letter g, it's pretty much always pronounced as a g, like in gun, whereas a c can either be pronounced like the c in in Celtic, like the football club, or in cat. However, in Old English, these noises were different, which is why they have the little dots just to denote that. So the y is often found in the past participle form, like in yeknawan, for example, and the c with the dot is actually pronounced like a ch. So for example in modern church. Now interestingly enough, the SC as well actually betrays its Proto-Germanic heritage, where the SC would be pronounced as a K all the time. But this actually, the Old English word for ship is SCIP, although in Old Norse that would be skip, which is SKIP. So originally it would have been pronounced as a K, but in Old English, and I believe in the Anglo-Saxon languages, so in Frisian as well, you see this, the SC is pronounced as a sh, and in later spelling they obviously changed the C to an SH, but you know, phonologically SH absolutely does not make the noise of sh, and neither does CH, which obviously replaced the palatal noise. That absolutely doesn't make it a ch either, but that's just how they chose to spell it. But anyway, these consonants also affect the vowels in strong verb class 3, because the vowels after them do change in accordance with it. So, for example, the verb yieldan, you have yieldan, yield, guldon, gulden. And again, we see that the infinitive and the first preterite, they change here into these nice diphthongs, again, because it's really when you're pronouncing the y kind of noise or any of the palatal consonants, you're moving up. It's quite a high noise to pronounce. And again, these are moving upwards from a, which is in the back, and then I is also moving. It would obviously have been so it would be moving up with ie, it's going up. So it's easier to pronounce these verbs by adding in these different vowels, these vowel changes that do occur. Now finally, there's also this one which essentially goes down to the nasal consonants, which are M and N. And again, here we see that this one is really quite different. So this is the verb drinkan, and in drinkan we have drinkan, drank, drunken, drunkon. So the only form that isn't affected here is the second preterite drunken, and we see that obviously the first, the infinitive has been affected. It would normally be an E. The first preterite has also been affected. That would normally be an ash. And finally, also the past participle, which would normally be an O, has also been affected. And there is actually a very interesting reason why this happens. This can once again be explained by looking at the position of the vowels where they are pronounced in the mouth. Now you can see that the general swing in the direction is actually going up. So we have obviously the change of the ash to an A, but then also the change from what would normally be an E to IE, and then the change of the O going to U. So generally speaking, it's moving up into the mouth into a higher position, because obviously you need your tongue pressed against the top to pronounce N, and a similar effect with M as well, which they're not two different sounds really. Which is why you then get this occurring with the not palatal diphthongization, with the nasal sounds. Now you can actually have an awful lot of fun with these. Well, I say fun, you know, for linguistics nerds like me, it's pretty fun, and everyone else sort of mocks us, but it's actually a lot of fun by looking at these different sound changes, because we can try and figure out which ones actually came first. So you might have noticed that we actually have similar effects going on from the different diphthongizations and sound changes. So it's interesting to try and work out which one actually caused it. Now if we look at an example of palatal diphthongization, we can see that in the verb yieldan, it could either be from the first preterite form yield, is either from palatal diphthongization, but it could also be from breaking, because the diphthong EA is also produced in breaking in that position. But we can actually prove which one of these came first, and I'll show you how. So if we look at another verb, cheorfan, we see that the last three of the vowel progression, actually they match up perfectly with palatal diphthongization's progression. But then if it matched perfectly, we would have as the first form, the infinitive form, cheerfan. However, we'd never find this form, and cheorfan is the only infinitive form that we find. And this must mean that it is from breaking, not from palatal diphthongization, because breaking has the correct diphthong of EO. And through this, we can therefore prove that breaking occurred before palatal diphthongization, because obviously it had broken before palatal diphthongization came in and had its effect on the vowel, which is why we get it attested in cheorfan, cheorf, kurfon, korfen, rather than cheerfan, which doesn't exist. Alright everyone, so thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been somewhat interesting, rather linguistic, maybe a little hard to follow. I hope I've made the explanations alright. It is quite a complicated something to get your head around. Now I will actually attach an essay that I wrote about sound change in strong verbs of class 3, which was the inspiration for this. Obviously being at university, not too much time to make new videos. I think last week's Kashmir was an exception. But I hope that this has been somewhat interesting and that you can sort of follow along what I'm doing here. I will try and get some vlogs done soon about my experiences here and also at York Viking Festival, so that's something to look out for. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. You can obviously correct all my mistakes in the comments, and I look forward to reading them. So I'll see you all again soon. This has been Linguistics with Leofwin. Oh, wrong one. History with Hilbert, and I'll see you all again very soon.